And so thinking about some maybe a little tips and advice of, kind of what can people do here in Taipei? Is there anything that you do suggest in terms of kind of staying safe right now in terms of an outbreak?
Well, so as you know, living here in Taiwan has been a great blessing because it has been pretty much the safest place on the planet. So Taiwan has done such an amazing job with this pandemic. Well, one easy, cheap, universally available way is to open windows. You get some air flowing. The point is to dilute indoor air with outdoor air. And what does that do? It lowers the concentration of virus. Another way might be installing carbon dioxide meters at businesses. And so you can really keep track of how much air is being circulated and breathed. If those carbon dioxide levels go way up, you know that the air might be dangerous for you. There's a lot of things that we could talk about, but I always talk about opening windows because that's easy for everyone to do no matter what, right?
Yeah, it's great advice. And
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show today. My name is John Drummond, or Yang Hao En.
Hello, 大家好，欢迎各位再度来到 NG 英文，我是 Angela。
We have a great episode for you today with my new friend Chase, who's known around the professional community as Chase W. Nelson.
是的，今天我们邀请到的美籍来宾 Chase 非常特别哦。他除了是位科学研究学者以外，也会唱歌，甚至呢还有跟我们中研院院士李文雄共事过。
My guest today is American and has been living in Taiwan for a few years now. He is a scientist, a research fellow, a singer, and so much more. So everyone, please welcome my new friend, Chase.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, Chase. It was so funny because right here in real time, we just confirmed that we have a wonderful mutual friend, Paul, who's been on the show.
Paul Whiteley.
Paul
yes.
Whiteley. What a breath of fresh air he is, and I can feel you are as well. And I'm so glad that we could connect. I harassed you on LinkedIn.
Yes, indeed. I was very happy to be harassed in that way, yes.
Yeah, I've just seen you've been so active in the science fields. You're so focused on COVID right now and safe practices, and you are an incredibly talented singer, and you're trying to really stay away from viral.
Yeah, you know, if I was the last person in the world to get COVID, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Yeah, there we go.
That's okay.
There we go. So we have so much to dive into today.
Great.
But I was hoping you could kind of give us a high level of who is the man, the myth, the legend.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I'm from Holland, Michigan, originally. Grew up in that town, surrounded by the lakes of Michigan, a beautiful area that I only really appreciated after I left. The nature is wonderful. I went to college in Oberlin, Ohio, and I went there because there was a combination of music and science. Because that college really excelled in both of them. So I did biology and some singing and saxophone in college. And then I went to the University of South Carolina for my grad school, where I got a PhD in virus evolution. After that, I did a couple of postdocs, New York City, and then Taiwan. I worked at Zhong Yuan, Academia Sinica, with Li Wenxiong.
What an incredible resume. And Chase, it's so cool because you said so beautifully, you're at the intersection of your passion for music and your passion for science. Two things I love, and really you're doing it from an academic standpoint and a passion. And so I was hoping we could dive in to start maybe with what is kind of your music career and interests, and how that's actually tying right now into so much of your research and your passion for helping people understand more about COVID and how to protect.
Yeah, so as you say, as a singer, keeping my instrument in good health and good condition is sort of a passion, an obsession perhaps of mine. And so, yeah, I've always been really hyper aware of how to keep my voice healthy, because unlike, say, a saxophonist, where your instrument's in a box, our instrument is in the shell of our body, and something like a respiratory virus can really affect that. So I've always been interested in singing. In college, I finally dawned on me, I don't have to be born knowing how to sing. I can actually take lessons and maybe learn a little bit. And so even though I couldn't sing as a kid, or I thought I couldn't, I was able to learn and slowly build a technique. And that led to some opportunities in musical theater, musicals like Spring Awakening and Godspell and Into the Woods, you know, some of these, some of the Sondheim stuff, newer stuff. And that sort of started happening right before grad school and during grad school. So that musical life, I mean, I've done a few semi-professional things, but it's not like the vocation. It doesn't support me, but it nevertheless is a very serious part of my life that I pursue with great passion. So I'm still taking lessons, and that's sort of been with me ever since.
I just can feel it's ringing true to who you are, and it ties so nicely, as you said, into your vocation now, which is as a scientist, right? Is that an official title I could...
Yeah, I'm research fellow.
Fellow.
Well, I work for the American government, but so all views my own. Yeah, I must say.
Yeah, good disclosure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So a research fellow, and as someone who cares so deeply about the science and the research, you're really focused right now on how to protect people from COVID and really help them understand a little bit more about this mythical creature that is COVID, right?
Right, exactly. So, like I said, my PhD is in virus evolution. So I've always been focused more on the genes of the virus and how mutations are accumulating, and maybe how viruses, might evolve to escape immunity or escape vaccines, things like that. But of course, COVID-19 affects it's the most important virus in the world, right? I mean, it's hard to deny that it has affected more people than anything else, especially right now. And so to me, it was just a natural outgrowth of my interest to really stay on top of what was happening with COVID. And specifically in Taiwan, as a data analyst, because another big part of my career is data analysis, data science. Technically, my title is bioinformatics. That's the name of my field.
Great. Love
bioinformatics.
Bioinformatics, yeah.
Which means I don't do real biology. I just
I get all the data points.
Exactly. I sit in front of a computer. I did real biology for a while, and that wasn't my favorite, to say the least.
Love it.
So yeah, it's just been a personal passion and interest of mine, especially because as a resident of Taiwan, I want to understand what is happening here. I want to understand the numbers and the outbreak, and how to protect myself.
I believe a lot of what you've been uncovering and what you've been working with some Taiwanese translators and maybe scientists and fellows, they've been working on translating your work that is about understanding an airborne illness. Is that something we could focus on a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this isn't my work. I'm just summarizing really what has been, what has become the consensus about COVID. Specifically that COVID-19 is primarily spread as an airborne infection. What does that mean? It just means that most people catch COVID by breathing shared air in an indoor space. Anyhow, so that's really the consensus of scientists around the world. And one of the foremost researchers in this area is a Taiwanese scientist named Dr. Chia Wang. And so she has been, she's had numerous papers in Science and other journals really uncovering the aerodynamics of the virus. And the analogy that she gives is that of cigarette smoke. So infectious aerosol particles behave a lot because they're similarly sized to cigarette smoke. So the sort of rule of thumb I always keep in mind is that if I can smell someone smoking a cigarette, then it is possible to catch COVID from them. And of course, it becomes more likely the closer you are. But if you just imagine everyone is smoking COVID cigarettes, if you will, that's a good rule in terms of how far you need to be away to really prevent the possibility that you'll catch COVID.
That's fascinating, yeah. And essentially, though, you can't, when I do smell cigarette smoke, I try to hold my breath, and I hate walking through it, right?
Right.
You can't really do that, though, with airborne particles with COVID. Is that correct? I mean, essentially, it would be in my respiratory system at that point, or can I, hold my breath?
I hold my breath. I certainly do. I mean, it's not in vain to do that, I would think.
Yeah.
Especially, there are ACE2 receptors all throughout the respiratory and in our gut in lots of places. And so, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say yes or no because there aren't randomized controlled trials answering every single one of these questions. But certainly, masks will help filter out some of the concentration of viruses, so there'll be a lower concentration reaching you. into your upper respiratory tract. The masks also, people don't talk about this very much, but masks also keep your throat and nose moist and warm. And actually, hydration helps the lining be less amenable to virus entry. And that's why a lot of viruses are more successful, if you will, in infecting us during the winter. Because it's drier and cold, and so that dry surface of your throat really gives the virus something to latch onto and enter cells more easily.
Fascinating. And so thinking about your own career in this sense, is there anything you want to be focusing on right now for 2023 and beyond? I mean, are you trying to marry more of your singing career with science to help people understand more of this, or where do you feel you're going with this now?
That's a great question, and people ask that a lot. Like, where, how do those two things meet? And actually, they're totally separate in a way for me. The singing is, or at least I tried to approach it as a more artistic, heartfelt endeavor. I do get too scientific about it sometimes, but to me that just keeps me balanced. And exercise, things like this. Use your brain sometimes, use your body sometimes, and keep yourself in good balance. But as a scientist, as a biologist, in terms of COVID, because I study virus evolution, I guess going forward, like you said, into the future, the thing that irks me, annoys me the most is that basically every single infection that happens is sort of like a lottery ticket for the virus in terms of generating new mutations, in terms of generating new variants. So every single infection that occurs gives us more chances that we'll have a new variant that could, escape our vaccines or escape natural immunity. And so this isn't a very hopeful message, but looking forward, I'm just wondering, how can we lower virus transmission across the globe so that these variants don't keep popping up? Because as long as it keeps evading our immunity and every infection helps it, there's kind of no end. Now, some people will say, well, natural immunity, if once everyone gets, say, Omicron, because it's slightly milder than some of the variants like Delta, maybe that will give everyone enough immunity and it will become more like the common cold. But really, it's kind of a flip of the dice. It's hard to predict something like that. So there's more unknowns than knowns.
Well, I love that you're at the forefront of it and you care so much about it. And so, shout out to all the healthcare workers and all the scientists around the world. The
healthcare work, that's who I really think we need to be keeping in our in our hearts right now. And
shout out to all of you.
Because they're going to have they're already having a tough time. So it's important to do what we can to limit spread, to keep our healthcare workers from becoming too overwhelmed.
Yeah, well said.
访谈一开始这里，我们这位热爱音乐，在美国密西根五大湖区长大的来宾提到说呢，他在大学念完生物学之后，继续深造拿到博士学位，专门研究病毒的演化，研究这个 virus evolution。那毕业后呢，到纽约做博士后研究，最后呢来到台湾跟我们中研院的李文雄院士合作。今天这位喜欢音乐、会吹萨克斯风，然后又研究病毒的博士，感觉真的很优秀，很有意思，对不对？比以往聊这个加密货币还要有趣多了。好，他说因为爱音乐，所以基本上就是爱屋及乌，不管是乐器还是自己的喉咙唱歌要用的这个声带呢，都会很小心的照顾，甚至也演过不少舞台剧哦。只是虽然说音乐是他生命中很重要的一部分，但说实在的也不是一个适合的职业，所以现在就是当成是伴随在他生活中的乐趣兴趣这样子，然后就是专心研究当前人人关心的这个新冠病毒，好让自己可以及时知道说目前这个生活环境疫情的情况到底是怎么样。这边他提到一个我觉得还不错的安全距离指标，不知道刚才大家有没有听到。他说他们有位研究员呢提出说，如果周围有个人在抽烟，那你如果可以闻到烟味的话，就表示你和抽烟者的这个距离有可能就是病毒还能够传染的距离。如果你再站远一点，站到闻不到烟味的地方的时候呢，那就比较会是一个安全的这个社交距离。当然像他们在节目中聊到说，有时候你如果闻到烟味，然后常常就是会暂时停止呼吸，暂时闭气嘛，对不对？ 等走过闻不到了再呼吸。那如果是新冠病毒的话，闭气有助于降低感染率吗？好，那针对这部分目前也没有专门做这样的调查说闭气是不是有助于降低感染率。所以来宾建议大家还是就是把口罩戴好戴满。好，除了口罩布料本身可以有效过滤病毒以外，因为你戴口罩的时候同时也是帮助口鼻保湿，让这种靠空气传播的病毒呢就比较不容易进入湿润的呼吸道进而感染人体，也就是为什么病毒在冬天的时候呢传染力比夏天强。另外来宾也提到说，因为每个传染案例都是让病毒演化突变，让他们可以躲过疫苗躲过抗体保护的机会。虽然说现在有一些说法是慢慢的到最后每个人都有抗体，就算感染了也只会有一些感冒症状而已，但是这种事情真的就是很难说嘛，所以希望未来可以研究出更多办法来降低全球感染率，以防更多变种病毒的出现。几个字来听一下。首先字首 post， 它有之后或是过后的意思。如果想要用英文表示博士班念完做博士后研究的话，可以像刚才来宾说的 postdoc 或是 postdoctoral， 好，博士后这样。那其他相关例子还有像是战后 post war， 还有我们最近这个后疫情时代 post pandemic， 也都是这样子的用法。另外这个 airborne 它指的是像新冠肺炎这样子靠空气流动靠空气传染的意思。最后这个片语 to stay on top of 什么什么什么，好，它原来可以指站在高处，但是在这边呢用法是表达能够掌握最新状况，像他刚刚说 stay on top of the pandemic, the virus， 好，就是说可以随时掌控随时了解最新的这个病毒疫情的状况。好，那我们赶快听下半段吧。
Thinking a little bit about kind of your own story with Taiwan, what brought you to Taiwan? How did you find Taiwan, and what were you really focused on when you came here? I believe you were a Gold Card member at kind of the early days of that? Or?
No, actually I became a Gold Card member after that.
Got it.
Okay.
So
that's actually an interesting little journey, because I came to Taiwan in September 2019. Right before COVID, good timing. I was finishing at the American Museum of Natural History. I was finishing a 3-year postdoc there, and sort of deciding where to go next. And I had known and done work with Li Wenxiong here at Academia Sinica, who literally wrote the textbook Molecular Evolution. So that's my field. And I wanted to learn directly from the master, as it were. So I was able to come here and do a postdoc with him. Towards the end of that, I had heard about the Gold Card program, incidentally, from a person at my gym. And so sort of a random encounter alerted me to the existence of the Gold Card. And I thought, well, I'd like to stay in Taiwan longer, so I'll apply. And it worked out. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Meant to be right there, you know? Love that kind of sequence of events for how that came to be. And so it's very cool now to think about. I know Mandarin hasn't been at the forefront of your own life, which is fine. But what I do love is the fact that a lot of the articles and everything you're kind of compiling is now really trying to get translated into Chinese. You're creating this unintentional language exchange, this beautiful information share in English and Chinese. I was hoping you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's been a very interesting part of living in Taiwan, is that I came with every intention of learning Chinese, of course. And of course, work simply did not allow it.
You're so busy. It's okay.
Well, I think it's a very common experience. Yeah, it's not just me. It's people come here with that intention, and whatever job they set out to do just takes all their time, all their brain energy, and all I have left after work is maybe I can go to the gym and exercise, but I can't think anymore, and I certainly can't look at screens anymore. So because of that, it's been a challenge for me, sort of keeping on top of what's happening with COVID in Taiwan, because of course the most informative articles are rightly in Chinese, because that's what people speak here and read. So there's been a lot of me asking people if they wouldn't mind, letting me know what this word means or what this article is saying. But then I was really getting a sense, and there's a great community here, especially an online community like with GOV, with Reddit, with Twitter. There's so many great people just wanting to contribute to dialogue and to learn from each other in Taiwan. So I've been very lucky to get plugged into some of those communities, specifically with things like working from home, with letting people know that that's important, letting people know about ventilation and opening windows and airborne spread of COVID. There's been a lot of people interested in that. And so when I was thinking about these issues, I'm a writer. I love writing, so I wrote some things in English, and sometimes someone would ask if they could translate it into Chinese. This last time, in the last month, I asked someone else if they could recommend a translator, and they ended up, it was just so sweet. This friend of mine, she asked her dad to translate it for me, and then another friend looked at it. It was just very nice. Everyone's willing to pitch in and just do what they can to make sure Taiwan succeeds, especially this next stage as we're transitioning to living with Omicron here. It's sort of an all hands on deck thing.
Like you said, everyone's trying to pitch in and do their part, and
right.
Love to hear that, people are reaching out to you. You're trying to find people to kind of do all this translation work and really just help people understand as things are developing, right? Yeah. And so I love that you guys are doing that, and shout out to all those communities, and hopefully you guys can continue, fighting the good fight here.
Right. Yeah. It's just an amazing community. There's no other way to say it.
I love that. Yeah. Really cool. And I believe the title of one of your last articles that I had seen was something like kind of calling to media to spread information, not hype, not
right.
these fear tactics that go around with this clickbaity titles.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Could you share a little bit of kind of about, what should media be focused on with reporting about COVID?
Right. So exactly as you say, a lot of the incentive, and especially online media, is a sensational title that makes people click. And specifically, I was quoted some of my observations about Taiwan, specifically that of the 75 and older ages here, a whole 20% have not received even one dose of vaccine. So there's about 20% of this older elderly crowd that simply won't get a dose. And I think that part of that was, when vaccines were first being rolled out here, anytime some freak accident happened after somebody got a vaccine, never mind whether it was related to the vaccine or not, there would be a headline, somebody has a car accident. Just kidding. But I mean, it could be anything that is totally unrelated, that, the media makes it sound like it's related to vaccines. So I think that the media does bear a lot of responsibility in scaring people who are, in front of their TV stations or reading their articles a lot. And that probably did some irreversible damage in terms of trusting vaccines. And what I wish they were focusing on is that the risk from COVID is much higher. Yes, vaccines do have risks. And it is universally agreed upon that those risks are dwarfed by the risk from COVID-19, right? And so there's really no comparison. However, I think it's also that people feel like, the vaccine is something they set an appointment for, and there's they know when that risk is happening. So it's maybe a little scarier. But with the virus, it's, you can kind of ignore it until it happens to you. It's uncertain. So maybe that risk feels a little safer, even because it's unseen and unknown, even though it's not necessarily safer.
Yeah. Well said. And I think, like you said, the media has responsibility, and unfortunately, we're in a cycle of our evolution that it's you need people's attention, and so hopefully, we can learn something from this moving forward, and how we report on a pandemic. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and for example, the CECC press conferences. The issues that the CECC, and this is true of the CDC in the U.S., everywhere, it's true across the globe, that the issues an administration or officials are thinking about are driven by what the press asks at the conferences, right?
Because these reporters are coming in with questions, right?
Yeah, and so they think, that's what people are concerned about right now. Well, I don't think I've ever heard and I don't speak Chinese, but I've never seen reporting on press actually asking about, say, airborne spread at a press conference for the CECC in Taiwan. And so the press also has a responsibility of focusing the attention of our officials on the right issues and the important things that need to be addressed, air quality, things like that. So, yeah, the press has a huge responsibility, in especially in a pandemic like this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we are coming to the end here of NG Ingwen. But if you could go back and talk to a younger Chase, maybe in Holland, Michigan, it's such a cool Holland, Michigan. Would there be any advice you give yourself about singing, science?
Oh, man.
Anything.
Well, specifically thinking in terms of Taiwan, I would have exposed young Chase to Chinese earlier. Because I think, I started hearing Chinese for the first time seriously as an older adult, and it's been difficult. So that, that's one thing living in Taiwan. I wish I had taken Chinese earlier.
It's never too late. We got other fish to fry.
Next vacation.
Awesome, Chase. Well, where can people find more of your life online? Maybe where can they find some articles that you've compiled?
Yeah, a lot of the articles about the COVID topic in Taiwan are at Tianxia, that is Commonwealth Magazine. They can find me on Twitter, Chase W. Nelson, or chasewnelson.com. I'm also on Facebook, and, just feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk to you or hear from you.
Awesome, Chase. Mr. Nelson, the man, the myth, the legend. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much.
下半段这边来宾提到他会3年前刚好在疫情爆发之前来到台湾，是因为以前他念书的时候用的教科书的这个作者呢，就是我们中研院院士李文雄所写。好，整个就是很崇拜对方，所以在结束3年前的时候，美国的工作之后，就决定来台湾找他的偶像，一起呢在中研院合作了几个研究。后来疫情爆发之后，因缘际会下又得到了可以申请就业金卡留在台湾工作的消息，所以申请后也就一直待到现在。那当初来台湾之前，本来也是有计划说来了就是要好好把中文学起来嘛，对不对？结果当然是没有，一来是因为工作真的是很忙，二来其实网络上很多社群也都很愿意跟他分享解释我们当地中文新闻的这个内容，那社群上面大家都是互相交流，一来一往嘛，对不对？加上他本身也常常会写文章发表，有时候呢就会有人帮他把他写的这个英文文章翻译成中文，让更多人知道关于疫情的相关资讯。另外在结束前他有提到台湾目前疫苗注射的情况，好，就是大概75岁以上的老年人口中呢，有 20% 的人都还没有打过疫苗。为什么嘞？一部分原因是媒体的煽动啦，造成了不可逆的这个伤害，这个 irreversible damage。像当时刚开始施打疫苗的时候，新闻媒体常常都会报道一些，比如说只要有人施打疫苗之后有发生事情，不管是不是真的跟疫苗有关，就都会归咎于疫苗，把报道写的好像都是千错万错都是疫苗的错这样子，导致于到现在呢，还是有人对于这个疫苗抱持了一个怀疑的心态而拒绝施打。所以他希望新闻媒体人可以好好正确的报道疫苗所能带来的益处。那这边我们下半段有2个蛮道地实用的片语，大家来练习一下。All hands on deck。这个用法呢，源自于以前水手出海的时候，如果出现紧急状况，大家就要 all hands on deck， 就是要大家赶快到甲板上面集合，处理因应任何可能发生的意外。所以可想而知，现在的延伸意思呢，就是要全体出动，全体总动员这样子。像刚刚来宾说，很多台湾当地人都会主动出力合作，帮忙翻译他写的文章，好让台湾社会大众呢对病毒有更深的了解。另外一个他也有用到的片语是 pitch in， 好，意思跟 all hands on deck 一样，都是大家一起出力一起帮忙的意思，只是用 pitch in 的时候呢要小心，不要跟 chip in 搞混哦。虽然说它也是有参与帮忙的意涵在，但是比较像是金钱方面的啦齁。像如果某位朋友生日，大家要一起出钱赞助买礼物的话， 就可以说大家一起 chip in， 大家一起出钱这样子。好，那一样希望大家都有从今天这个不是加密货币的主题呢学到一些东西。如果有兴趣的话，可以上推特追踪来宾 Chase W Nelson 的这个账号，读一些他写的英文文章哦。
All right, well that is our NG 英文 show for today. We hope everyone enjoyed listening to that. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and now Spotify. You can search NG 英文or you can search on IG, NG English ICRT. And don't forget to tune in every Wednesday morning from 6:30 to 7 and Wednesday night from 9 to 9:30. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
好啦，今天的节目就到这边告一段落啦，感谢各位的收听，别忘了订阅我们的 Spotify 还有 YouTube 频道哦。那喜欢我们节目的话，也要记得到 Instagram 到 IG 上追踪我们哦。如果各位有什么其他问题是想要问来宾的，也请欢迎在底下留言告诉我们，我们一定会想办法帮你问到手。好啦，那就下周在空中相会咯，拜拜。